Today I'm speaking with Judson Laipply. If you're like me, this name might not be well known to you, and he was the first to go completely viral on YouTube with his video, The Evolution of Dance, and the story behind it and what he's been doing afterwards is absolutely fascinating. Enjoy the conversation with Judson Laipply. Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Business of Meeting podcast. Today, my guest is a legend. If you're like me, you might not know his name on the first glance. It's Judson Laipply. And then you Google this thing called The Evolution of Dance, which 17 years ago he did, and which has now, as this morning, 312 millions of views. It's absolutely amazing. Judson, thank you so much for taking the time and for sharing your journey with me today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me, Eric.
It's just phenomenal. You're one of those person, a pioneer, I would say. But before anything else, tell us a little bit about your journey, because before doing that, you were working in cruise line.
So in a way, my journey and my evolution is both a reflection of, I think, a lot of people's, but just something happened along the way that gave me a leg. It was like a rocket ship. Those of us who work, so I'm a professional speaker. I always have been as far as my full-time profession. It's what I've always wanted to do since I was in really the beginning stages of high school. But in the 90s, a professional speaker was still really kind of rarefied air in that there weren't a lot of them. They were around, but it was kind of a niche thing. Nowadays you hear people, a lot of influencers and speakers and people holding seminars and stuff. And so I was always an outgoing person who loved being around people, who loved engaging with people and talking and doing those things. And so I was looking for experiences while I was in college that would both help me in my given field, which is recreation and leisure. I'm a big fan of play, and then using play to teach. One of my favorite quotes early on was Plato once said, "You can learn more about a person in an hour of play than a lifetime of conversation." And I've always felt that that's really true in the way people interact with other people and how they problem solve and how they work as a team. And so I looked for opportunities to explore inside the recreation world. And so during college, I worked on a cruise ship. I was youth coordinator, so I ran programs for the kids, and then in the evening would have to run programs for the adults. Then I worked at a camp in Colorado, running, it was called a campfire counselor. So I was in charge of the evening events, and it was a live-in camp, 2 4-week sessions where the campers came and stayed for 4 weeks at a time. And so that was really great exposure to both speaking in front of people, getting used to running programs, and then just getting to see some of the world. And then I kept speaking and I kept doing it. And I kept thinking in the back of my head, how can I make this a profession? How can I do this for my career? And I kept looking for opportunities to present every conference I attended as a student. Then I went to graduate school and I continued. And the reason I decided to go to graduate school is I wanted to. And then somebody who I knew was speaking said, listen, if you can and you're able to, go get your master's degree right away, because they can never take it away from you. And it's an instant credibility factor. In the 90s, they didn't just give out master's degrees. Now, I'm not saying that they just give them out today, but there are institutions out there where you can earn your master's degree by paying and attending a few things online. And then they go, okay, great, good job. You've got a master's degree now. And so that same individual also gave me the advice that when you start working as a professional speaker, and anyone in the business of meetings knows this, your goal in a meeting is to be memorable. You want people to attend a meeting and say, that was amazing. I want to go back to their next meeting, or I want to go back to this. And as a speaker, our job is also the same. We want to help make sure your meeting is that way. But if you look at it from just our career standpoint, we want to give an experience that the people in the audience go, oh my gosh, that was amazing. And he said flat out, he said, listen, most people won't remember what you talked about. Get off the high horse of that you're going to change somebody's life in an hour. You might give them something that's really perfect that they needed to hear at that moment, and that's fantastic. But they might remember something that you do. So whether that's a 4-frame anagrammed, used model content, crazy thing that you've created that they're going to remember forever, or if it's a bit that you do or a story that you tell or a performance piece that you have. And so I had begun exploring the idea of talking a lot about change and evolution, and came up with this thing called the evolution of dance, which combined my love and mediocre skills of dancing with.
Well, I wouldn't say mediocre, but I've seen you again. I watch again those 6 minutes this morning. You got some moves.
I got a great compliment once from a choreographer out in LA. I was fortunate because of the viral video. I got to do a lot of fun things, including I got to be in a Weezer music video. And so Weezer had this great song called Pork and Beans, and they wanted to do a fun video at the time in the early about 2008 or 9, I think it was, showcasing a lot of the big viral videos. Because in the early days, viral videos were not a commonplace. They happened, but they didn't happen on a daily basis. There wasn't what's viral today? It was every couple of weeks, every couple of months. And so Weezer did this whole video full of some of the different. So I got to go out there, and a choreographer came up and he gave me a great compliment. He said, "Judson, I want to tell you this, and I don't want you to think I'm being mean." He goes, I want to explain myself, but I love your video because I can tell you're not a trained dancer. And I'm not. I've never had a dance class. I never took. So I'm not a technically trained dancer. And he goes, but you can dance and you have so much fun. And it's such a great, because dance is supposed to be a reflection of joy or a reflection of emotion. And I choose joy as the emotion for the video itself. And so I started doing the dance routine in the early 2000s, kept doing it year after year after year, kept perfecting it and building upon it and making it longer and getting feedback and adding things, subtracting things. And then in 2006, after about 5.5, almost 6 years of speaking full time, I threw it up on YouTube to get the embedding code so I could copy and paste it into my MySpace profile. And luckily for me, it went viral on its own. And it was the first viral video on YouTube pretty much of all time.
Which is phenomenal. So from what you say, it's another overnight success that took several years in the making.
Correct.
But take us back at that time. It was 17 years ago. So it's 2006. YouTube is not what it is today.
Yeah, YouTube was about, if I remember correctly, YouTube came online in May of 2005. So my video, when I uploaded it, YouTube was just a little under a year old. And, the first several months of, like so many things that happen in the world of tech, YouTube originally was a dating site. Like that's what they first started as. They created the website as a way for people to meet each other for dating. And after the first couple of months, there was no traction. They weren't getting the visitors they would have, but their beauty was they wanted people to make videos about themselves to showcase somebody that might be interested in dating them. And what they found was people were just sharing videos, not necessarily of, hey, my name is Judson and I am a Libra and I like long walks on the ocean. They were sharing videos of other things. And that kind of sparked their, oh, maybe we've got something else here. And it's the ease of sharing videos. And because it's easy for us to forget with the convenience of the internet today. In 2006, most people didn't have high-speed internet. It was still a lot of dial-up. It was still a lot of DSL or slower. And so if somebody wanted to send a video, like an actual file, it might take you 4 or 5 hours to download it before you could watch a 2-minute clip. And so YouTube's real genius lied in that it just created a short URL that you could send to somebody and then they could go watch that video from there.
So at that time, what is it? Several million people are using YouTube in 2006?
Maybe. I mean, it's hard to tell. They've never been completely open with their numbers, but my guess is it was probably just a couple 100,000 users. And, the same thing it was like most things. If somebody sent a link and you had never used YouTube before, YouTube didn't require you to create an account before you watched a video. So much of what people try to do on the internet nowadays is to capture things. And, for those of you in the meeting profession, I get it. And if you're hosting your own meetings and you want to make sure you capture all that information, I'm a big proponent of never make anyone do any extra steps more than necessary at the beginning, because You just won't. I mean, how many times has somebody asked you to vote for them for some online thing? You click the link, and as soon as you get there, they want your email, and you're like, I'm not doing that. Sorry, you're not getting my vote now.
Yeah, I do that to help friends sometimes. But yeah, absolutely. So you posting your video on YouTube. It's 2006. You said it goes viral. How? What did you do? Or it's just like, wow, I had no idea.
I didn't have any idea. The idea of viral didn't really exist yet. So I was speaking, I had been speaking, I was continuing to speak. I actually uploaded the video because I had taught a 4-minute version of the evolution of dance to about 900 high school students as part of a leadership program. I was approached by someone I had worked with before, and they said, hey, we're going to cancel our regular dance this year. The students are getting a little too friendly with each other on the dance floor, and we want to do something that will still have a lot of energy output because our students have a lot of energy. They're from all over the country. We want to, she's like, can you basically dance them out of their energy for a couple of hours? And I said, sure, I can teach you a version of the dance. And so I taught a 4-minute version of the dance, and some students came up and said, hey, will you post the full version on your YouTube, on your MySpace page? Because they had followed me, that we were friends on MySpace at the time. And they said, and can we have your permission to perform the whole 6-minute routine as a group for our school talent show? And I said, absolutely, that's great. Gave them the music track. And I said, how do you post a video on MySpace? And they're like, we don't know. We've seen other people do it, so you have to figure it out. So I figured it out, posted it, put it on my MySpace, sent them a message that basically just said, hey, here's the full video. Have fun, practice. Here's the link that you can use to use the track. And that was it. That's all I thought about it. And then 4 weeks later, I opened up my computer and I had notifications from YouTube that someone had liked or commented or favored my video. And I was like, oh, this is cool. That's awesome. I wonder how this happened. I pull up the video and it's got 30,000 views.
Huh.
And I was like, yeah, this is amazing. Oh my gosh, this is so cool. Maybe someone will hire me to speak after they saw this video. Because one of the things I didn't really consciously think about. I did, but I didn't. It was a brilliant move on my part, as I put my name at the beginning. I put my name and my website at the very beginning in the bottom left-hand corner because I'm an Apple fan. I use Apple products. Yep. At the time, iMovie had a very simple title. You upload the video and then you can just do the music. They call it the music video title because it looked like a music video in the bottom left corner. And I remember thinking, maybe someone will track me down and I'll get a gig. Someone will hire me to speak for their event. That would be great. And then another day goes by and I flew out to San Francisco to get ready for a weekend retreat for a bunch of students with Kiwanis International. And I left on Friday morning, looked at my email real quick, went to check this out, and it had 90,000 views. Wow. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. This is amazing. Oh, what am I going to do? Great. And then I left for 2 days because our retreat was out in San Francisco area, this place called Half Moon Bay area. And it was a campground and there was no internet. There was no cell phone service. Wi-Fi wasn't, you didn't even have Wi-Fi in hotel rooms yet. You were still connecting to an Ethernet cable.
You could still disconnect.
You could disconnect, and like the students were able to disconnect, and that was part of the weekend. And so when I got back on Sunday, it had jumped from 90,000 views to 500,000 views. Oh. And I had gotten several emails through my website or friends who had seen it. My brother actually had a voicemail on my phone that was like, hey, I don't know if you know this or not, but he followed somebody online and their weekly newsletter, my video is highlighted in that. And he's like, I don't know if you're okay with this or not, but like, there's a video of you doing your routine and somebody I know is like talking about it. And so over the course of the next several years, but in that burst over the next several months, it just was this level of craziness that kept snowballing. And again, this is early internet days. So there was no social media platforms for sharing. The way that somebody went viral in the early 2000s was somebody emailed a link. Huh. So you literally would have people emailing the link out to their list of 1,000, or if somebody ran, everyone had that aunt or uncle who had their own email list where, they just sent out links every week of, oh, here's some funny things I've come across, in the last week. And so the best example of kind of the first real moment of, oh, this is different than anything else is I was when I left to go to San Francisco, I was out on the road on the West Coast. I live in Cleveland, Ohio area. So I was living in Cleveland at the time, went out to the West Coast. This is all happening in a few days after that. So maybe that was on Sunday. So maybe Thursday or Friday, the video has now gotten up to a couple of million views. And I get a phone message from somebody I don't know, a number I don't know. I had gone in for an event, came out, and the message just basically said, hey, Judson, this is whatever their name was. Yeah, I'm from YouTube. And first off, let me just tell you, we love your video. It's amazing. Everyone here thinks it's so cool. And like, we're just so thankful. And, I'm sure now it's gotten a lot of interest and, really. And he goes, well, we got a call from the Today Show and they wanted to know if we could give them your information. We take our privacy very, very, very important, and we don't just want to give it to them without your permission. And of course, I was like, wait, what? Yes, absolutely. Give them my information. Give me the number right now. I'll call them myself. And so that moment was kind of like, this is like the fact that it got on the radar of, at the time, the Today Show was the #1 television show here in the United States for morning shows. And so called the producer back. We had a really nice chat. And it was the year that Katie Couric was retiring that summer. And so they had already really programmed out the rest of the summer. So this is in beginning of May. And they said, let's circle back and we'll aim to have you on in maybe June or July. And so I went back on the show. And by the time I had gone on the show, it had jumped to about, I think, 70 million views and had, at that time, fortunately taken over the #1 most watched spot on YouTube at the time. So that began.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And it began what really truly is still, the fact that we're still talking about it 17 years later, it's a ride that there's a wave that's still kind of coasting a little bit on.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. Have you been on other shows as well, on podcast, radio? Or?
Yeah, it's like anything. When you have something like that happen, it's drinking from a fire hose for a long period of time. And so I got to go on the Today Show a couple of times. Good Morning America, Ellen, Oprah.
Really?
Tosh Point oh, all sorts of great experiences. I got to be on the cover of some magazines. I was on the cover of USA Today one day. So all these things that when you're a speaker or an influencer or, when you are your own product, that's the dream. That's what you dream about. And there's nothing I can ever do that would even come close to emulating an experience like that. And so I sat with some friends who I trusted and, not necessarily mentors, but just people that I could bounce ideas off of. And we all kind of agreed, when something like this happens, you just have to ride the wave. You maintain truth to who you are and you don't go chasing after squirrels, because there were a lot of opportunities that people would say, oh, do you do this? And I could easily see where someone would be like, oh yeah, I totally want to do that. But I was lucky that I was 30. And so I had already kind of established myself for about 6 years as a speaker. I knew that's what I wanted to do. And so I was able to say yes to things that continued in that evolution and no to things that would take me off of that path of where I really wanted to go.
I think that what you just say now is brilliant, brilliant advice for any person in any business. Actually, can you give an example of this? The squirrel, the shiny object that was submitted to you, and you say no, thank you.
Yeah. So some of the easiest ones are people wanted to know if I would come to LA. And did I have any scripts that I had written? Did I have any idea? Did I want to become an actor? So if you've ever seen the Evolution of Dance video, it looks like it was filmed at a comedy club.
Yeah.
So I at the time was using a marketing moniker called inspirational comedy. I do enjoy comedy. I am funny. I write comedy. I've done improv. I went to a couple years of schooling. And so comedy is an element that I use to deliver the content that I have. People assume that I was a comic. And so therefore there's a natural progression in the world of comedy that if you become famous, you go sign a writing deal with a television studio. Maybe you get a 3-year deal and you come up with ideas that you can pitch for sitcoms. So lots of people who wanted to know if I wanted to do a sitcom. There was a semi-popular, still to this day, really, really popular television show it was a reality show that involves people. And I was asked if I wanted to apply to be on that show. the show filmed during October. And so in the initial phases, they said, we can't guarantee you'll get on, but we would really love for you to apply. And we will fast track you to at least the interview round type situation. And I said, okay, when would it film? And they told me, and it was, I think I had 18 shows already booked for that time frame. And I was like, no, I am not going to go over here and do that. And it was a show that if you win a very large prize. And so they were trying to say, oh, but you could win this. And I'm like, listen, I'm not going to give up what I know is going to happen for what could possibly happen. I could go on that show and I could be gone within the first 2 episodes and no one would ever remember that I was on it.
Right.
And it happens in the meeting industry too. How often do people spend time thinking, okay, how are we going to incorporate AI? How are we going to incorporate QR codes? How are we going to incorporate an app? How many times have they tried to incorporate a hashtag into a conference only to have, 4 people who are all on staff tweet or post something on Instagram that has the hashtag? If it's not something that aligns with what you naturally do, you got to be able to say no to it because it's not going to continue to deliver on whatever your particular promise is.
Absolutely. Well, I see a routine on your next show about those 4 hashtags and the stuff. That's for sure. How is it or do you have the chance when you go on Ellen or Oprah to actually speak with them, or it's just like you just go 2 minutes, thank you, goodbye, or you get a chance to speak with them?
It depends on the show. It depends on the day, who else is there. So my Ellen appearance, more times than not, you do not get to interact with them. Usually they've got 1,000 things going on. And so they've got stand-ins. So it was really interesting. Oprah and I always think Oprah and Apple are the same. They're very rarely were they trendsetters. They never were first to market. They were always just best to market. A lot of Apple's products are not new product. Whatever product you love, somebody else did it first and before them, but Apple perfected it. And so Oprah finally did a YouTube episode in 2009. So YouTube had been around for several years. It had become, I think at that time, the 2nd or 3rd most popular website on the internet. Google had just bought it, and then Oprah does a show. So I go on Oprah. They tell you flat out, because you don't see Oprah. Oprah doesn't even come out until the show starts airing. So they've got stand-ins and they say, listen, we've given her information. She's got cards. She's got questions. We have no idea what she's going to do. So you just have to react to her. Don't go up on stage until she invites you up. Don't go in for a hug unless she acts like she's going to hug you. Like, you react to whatever she does. This is not your show. It's her show. And then the day that I was on Ellen, Tiger Woods was also on that day.
Oh, wow.
So they filmed his segments first, and she spent all her time with him, which is totally understandable. I always laugh at it. It's a great example. Tiger Woods was promoting a video game that he had coming out. Tiger Woods doesn't want to be on Ellen. Like, he doesn't go, I can't wait to get on Ellen. I'm sure he loves Ellen. I'm sure he's fine with doing Ellen, but he's not wanting to be me. I want to be on Ellen. So I'm like, yeah, what do you want? What do you? And so they take care of Tiger Woods. But I had other people I know who have gone on Ellen and had talked to her. She comes around and says hi to everybody beforehand. And so she usually was very gracious. But my particular experience was I didn't see Ellen in person until I walked out. I opened and closed the show in the broadcast version, but we filmed those later. Like, we filmed Tiger's segments first so he could leave. Then we started over, and I started the show and then ended the show.
Got it. So you have this tremendous success on YouTube, the first viral video, as you said. By the way, are you getting paid now by YouTube for the million views and everything? What's the deal there? I mean, if you can talk about it, but it's
oh yeah, well, I mean, it's a very, very common question, especially with the younger generation when they find that out. They're like, "Oh my!" So I have not made any actual money from the viewership of the original evolution of dance. Couple of reasons being, number one, when it first came out, it was long before there was a partnership program or ads even were it was the early days. 2, it's got a lot of licensed music. So if you do some digging in the world of music rights, you soon learn that there are a minimum of 2 rights for every single song. There's a publisher right and a mechanical right. The mechanical is the person who writes the song. The publisher is the publishing company that publishes the song. So that's a minimum of two. But it's a commodity that people will break up into pieces and sell off. Or if there's four people who wrote a song, they each have a piece of that right.
Wow.
So the original Evolution of Dance has 30 songs, which means a minimum of 60 rights holders, what is probably more like 200 when it's all said and done. I feel very fortunate that I probably got grandfathered in that because it wasn't making money, no one's angry. We tracked for a little while. We had a link that went to iTunes. Like in my old website, I had a link of all the songs and you could go buy the songs on iTunes. We didn't make money off that. It wasn't an affiliate link. It just was, here are all the songs if you want to buy them. And we tracked about, I think, 700 or 800 purchases of almost each song. So we were able to say, hey, listen, yes, we used your song and we thank you. It's part of pop culture history and we made you a little bit of money. So please don't get angry and please don't tell YouTube to take the video down.
Right.
So now there are ads that run against the video. Those money that gets generated from those ads now gets distributed to the different rights holders who have made claims against the video. So the software that YouTube has now is so incredible because it recognizes pretty much a sliver of a song. And if you use anything that is copyrighted, they don't tell you just to take it down anymore. They say, okay, we're going to run ads against it, but we're going to give the money to the part of that holder. So I think if I remember correctly, I want to say there's about 13 or 14 rights holders who are earning revenue on my video, which I'm totally fine with. You will never once hear me complain about how much I should have made off of the viewership of my video.
But obviously, it brings you, for your brand, is phenomenal. So did you see, you're talking about the momentum and your friends telling you, keep doing what you do, focus on what you want to be doing, and basically ride the momentum. How does that translate for you, for your speaking business and for your career?
It was very, when I first started speaking, I met with people who had been doing it for a while, and they all said the same thing. They all said, listen, if you're going to do this, you have to recognize that there are really multiple components, but there's two main aspects. One, there's the performance part, the actual speaking. When you're on stage, what you're doing, what you're saying, how you're saying it, how you're making your audience feel, all of that. But then there's the business side, which a lot of speakers aren't great at the business side. And it's not because of fault of their own. It's just because it's hard to think in terms of a business.
Correct.
Because a lot of speakers become very creative. Not all of them. And again, it's an overgeneralized statement. But I said, okay, I want to look at this as a business. And a lot of them gave me really good advice. They said, listen, minimum 3 to 5 years. You got to give yourself 3 to 5 years to establish a base of both customers and content and niche and marketing and all that. So I made a 5-year business plan. And that was in 2000. And I was getting ready, my personal goal, and I had hit all of my goals. I had exceeded a couple of them. Like I was right on where I realistically thought I should be and was very happy with the trajectory of my career. And that summer was when I was going to sit down and write a new business plan, a new 5 to 10 year plan. Okay, what did I really want to do? Where did I really want to go? Who are my favorite audiences? Who do I want to speak to? And then the video hit. And that was kind of like, okay, do I actually write a business plan now or do I just kind of go where it goes? And for me, fortunately, my own desire was to start moving into more corporate settings because I had just turned 30. So I finished graduate school, started speaking, and it was right around my 30th birthday. And I was finally to the point where I felt old enough that, when you're really young and you're standing in front of a corporate audience, if you're not a celebrity of astronomical levels, the audience immediately is like, what's this baby going to tell us? When you start to hit your 30s and mid 30s and 40s, now you've got enough worldly experience that you're not telling people what to do, but you can share some of your own experiences and your own research. And they have a much higher ability to listen to what you're going to say versus, having to spend the first 30 minutes trying to prove that they should be listening to you.
It's so true. And I started my first business at 28 and still today I have a baby face. So I grow the goatee here, the little beard. And so I look a little older and it was okay.
I'm the same way. When I started growing facial hair, automatically people are like, oh, you're much more sophisticated now. And, and then as you can tell, when you, it starts getting gray. And then all of a sudden you're like, no, wait, I don't want this. I want it to be dark.
Gray? You're kind. It's white there.
Yeah. I mean, gray, white. They're
I'm
kind of the
talking
same
for
in
me.
my
I'm
book.
talking for me.
Well, me too.
So you're writing this wave, no more 5 years business plan at that time. And what is happening? People are calling you. Can you come and talk? Can you speak on what are the topics you're talking about? And how are you incorporating or leveraging the evolution of dance, basically the last 15 years?
Yeah. So when you work as a speaker, there are a lot of different reasons people will hire you. My brand is high energy, high entertainment value, but cemented in concrete educational concepts. My particular through line is that everything changes, not everything evolves. Learning how to let go of the things that we don't really have any control over and maintain our focus and our choices and our actions in on the things that we do so that you can continue, for example, AI is such a perfect example because we're seeing a lot of people fear in every industry that AI is going to revolutionize everything. Is it going to change some things? Yeah, absolutely. But I was talking to a group recently, a group of CPAs, and I was doing some research ahead of time. And, the world of accounting is a great example. Will accounting AI software get rid of the need for an accounting department? And I found a headline from in the mid 80s, which literally said, is this the end of the CFO? And it was about a new software coming out called Excel, which would allow almost anyone to run their own accounting. And the person writing the article it was like they could have just changed the word from Excel to AI. The same thing for today. And too often we sometimes get wrapped up in the fear of the futuristic change versus being able to say, okay, I can't keep AI from happening. Like I could stick my head in the sand in whatever my industry is, but AI is still going to be around. So how do we navigate figuring out what we can utilize AI for and what we can just disregard? QR codes are great. Do you remember when QR codes first came out? It seemed like
oh my goodness,
every company wanted them. They were everywhere, and everyone's like, "What are these? Like, what do we use with these? Like, what are we supposed to happen with these?" And they're like, "Oh, you can do this and you can do this." And then they kind of went away, and now they've slowly started coming back into usage because people are finally reached that infiltration point where it's a mass acceptance of this concept of pointing a camera at some weird looking thing and that taking you to somewhere.
Brilliant. I love that. I love that approach, and I totally agree with you. It's actually going to create more opportunities, but things are changing. Now, you're a comedian, you said you're writing comedy as well. Talking about the evolution of comedy, what are the things that you see? And I'm sure there's a lot of things you were able to write 15 years ago that today would get you canceled or thank you, Judson, we don't want to hear from you anymore.
Well, luckily for me, I was never a shock comic. So that was never kind of my modus operational. And when I say I write comedy, I just mean I'm writing for stage, so a lot of my comedy comes from observational stuff, but more observational about human nature, not so much observational about humans. And I think that's where people start to get into trouble. When you're trying to get a laugh at the expense of the humanity of anyone,
yeah,
you're gonna, it's not, people don't want to hear that anymore. And I'm glad that we're finally moving to a part where you can say, it's one thing if I say something about myself. That's probably always going to make people laugh. Like, because people you can find a connection like, oh, I did this. Have you ever done this? I thought this was funny. Things about your life. When you start trying to make observations about other people's lives that you don't have any connection to or have any understanding of who they are, that's where I think that comes because people are now starting, our level of empathy as a world has been raised over the last several decades. It's nowhere where it needs to be, but hopefully will continue to rise as empathetic. And so then that creates people who are unwilling to listen to someone being, for lack of a better term, an asshole towards somebody else just to try to get a laugh.
And as Ellen would say, I wish we can come back to judging people only by the type of car they're driving.
Yeah, pretty much. Judge them on the materialistic things in life. And Ellen's a great example because Ellen was hilarious. Ellen was ostracized. Ellen was blackballed in the industry for a long time because she was the first person to ever come out
Yeah.
and in real life. And then boom, she was gone. And then many years later, she came back and she was beloved. But then people started asking questions about some of the way she operated and some of the things that she did. And so there's this kind of, it's a constant flux of how you are and what you're doing, and getting people to laugh when you're not making fun of someone else is a lot harder. It's there's some great comics out there who are very clean comics, and they will talk about their choice to be clean makes it actually more difficult sometimes to get people to laugh than the quote unquote dirty comics, not cussing and getting a laugh when you do something like that feels so much better than going what they call the lowbrow route, for the easy laugh.
Absolutely. Besides you, who are your favorite comedians?
I'm a big fan of Brian Regan.
Say that again?
Brian Regan so Brian Regan and Jim Gaffigan are two of my favorite. Mike Birbiglia is a good one. I've always loved Chris Rock. Some of Dave Chappelle, not all of Dave Chappelle, in his early days. With comedy, I have a tendency to enjoy most of it. Hannette, Tish Norman, or not Tish Norman. Tish was Tish's last name. Is it Tish Norman? Maybe. No, it's not Tish Norman.
I couldn't help you on this one.
No, Tig Navarro. I think that's how you say it. So, and I think that's the best part about comedy is there's so many different realms and ways. I was watching a video the other day of Steve Martin acceptance speech at the Golden Globes for like a lifetime. And Steve Martin might be one of the most brilliant comics of all time. Just in a very, he doesn't do everything, but what he does so very well. I think that's part of what's great is, the best comics all agree, like, hey, no single comic is the best comic ever.
I agree. Yeah.
Because there's so many different ways to be funny, and comedy, Betty White was so great whenever she played when she was the straight person versus the crazy funny person, she was brilliant at it.
I love Sebastian Maniscalco.
Yeah, Sebastian's great. I mean, Sebastian is just,
and I love.
You would like Brian Regan then. If you like Sebastian, you'll like Brian Regan too.
Yeah, I'm gonna look for that. And I love this Finnish guy called Ismo, ISMO.
All right, I'll check him out for sure.
He's hysterical. He's talking about obviously not being English native, how people are using the words in English. I mean, really, really amazing.
Judson, our language is such a stupid language. The English language is really, really silly.
No, one of his routine is, I came to America, and he does that with his Finnish accent, and he goes, and I find out that the answer to the question, what's up, is what's up. There's so many things like that. I just love it.
That is perfect.
And he plays this character. It's because it's not only the content, it's how you use your body and how you pause, and you know that better than I do. He's just phenomenal. Judson, I mean, thank you so much for taking this time today to speak with me and share the background of the evolution of dance, which I think is phenomenal. How would people get in touch with you if they want to reach you?
Sure. So my name is JUDSONLAIPPLY. So that's my website, judsonlaipply.com. That's all my handles. And the interesting thing about doing it, so the dance itself is now about 8 minutes. I'm still speaking. I do between 30 and 40 shows a year. I try to keep it to that amount. But I've actually announced that I'm going to retire the dance in about 4 years' time. Wow. So I'm 47 now. That'll be right around somewhere in the fall, 4 years from now. So we're recording this in September. So I don't know exactly when. I don't have a set date. But by the end of this year, 4 years later, I will officially retire the dance. And the joke is, someday it's going to go from funny to sad, and I have to make sure I know when that is.
It's brilliant. So are you going to have a longer farewell tour than Elton John?
I probably not quite that long. I mean, he's done 4 farewell tours now, it seems like. He's probably on one right now, isn't he? I don't know. Or he just announced his farewell tour.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you again in the future and seeing you perform on stage.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me today, and we'll see you soon.
Judson, thank you so much for sharing your story, and congratulations again. Absolutely phenomenal. 312 million views 17 years later. It's absolutely crazy. And love what you said as well about focusing on what you like and what you do best. So thanks again for that. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to connect with me, please go on LinkedIn or join my Facebook group, www.eventbusinessformula.com/group. And if you enjoyed this conversation, please share it with your network. Thank you. Bye-bye.